everybody. This is SportsGrid. Welcome into NewsWire. I am Adam Kaufman. We got you for the next hour. We're going to hit on a ton of stuff as usual. You got big news in the NBA. Today is the NHL trade deadline. More moves by the day in the NFL. And of course, the business of sport is always a big part of the program. But we begin on the gridiron where Geno Smith, at 35 years old, is looking for a new home. The Las Vegas Raiders cutting him loose after, of course, remember, the trade from Seattle to Vegas, signing a 2-year, $75 million extension to play for his old pal, Pete Carroll, who he was with in Seattle. Both of them are on the outs now. Smith released the Raiders opening up $8 million in salary cap space while taking on $18.5 million in dead money, as you can see in that tweet from Adam Schefter. There are more and more reports looming and surrounding this story. Among them, the Raiders, may be in the quarterback market beyond the obvious of, hey, they've got the number 1 overall pick off a 2-13 campaign for Geno Smith personally, where he led the NFL in interceptions. It was really just a dumpster fire of a season, unfortunately, in year 1 and the only year with the Raiders for Geno. So everyone has assumed with that number 1 overall pick, the Raiders will go out, draft the reigning champion, reigning Heisman winner, Fernando Mendoza, out of Indiana. And I'd say that's a pretty safe assumption as things go right now. But the interesting report out of Diana Rossini from The Athletic earlier today is that the Raiders, again, could still be in the QB market, as they may not want to start Mendoza, the, again, perceived number 1 overall pick, right away, even if they take him. So they would still be looking for a quarterback in free agency to be something of a bridge QB, as you don't see oftentimes these days with number 1s. For instance, Cam Ward started out of the gate last year as a member of the Tennessee Titans, but Drake May, who was the 3rd overall pick in the draft the year prior by the Patriots, he didn't start until a decent chunk of the way into the year. It was Jacoby Brissett, the current Cardinal, who was the Week 1 starter. So not unprecedented, obviously, among top 3, top 5 picks, let alone number 1. Let's go over to the world surrounding Kalshi. We had been talking of late about the death of Ali Khamenei, of course, the supreme leader of Iran. Kalshi is facing backlash after refusing to pay out $54 million in bets tied to his fate. Kalshi says the rules do not allow markets that directly profit from someone's death. Kalshi, they closed the market, of course, at the last trading price instead of paying full winnings and refunded some fees. Kalshi treated the market like an invalid market, which has really rubbed many the right way, particularly those who stood to profit. When reports emerged that he had died, many trading holders holding yes shares believed that they had won a large payout. Kalshi froze the market, however, and voided the payouts. So having to deal with some of the backlash as it relates to that right now. I will remind people how sick and twisted all of this is, because again, we are talking about the death of somebody and people wagering on it in the prediction market. But again, that's where we are in the space right now. Going over to the NCAA and back to football. The NCAA is heeding the Supreme Court's ruling over Trinidad Chambliss, the preliminary injunction that is being appealed by the NCAA because it granted him eligibility for the upcoming 2026 season. In a nearly 700-page filing to the Mississippi State Supreme Court today, the NCAA is asking the court to overrule the injunction and expedite the ruling. Going over to the Diamond, of course, baseball spring training is underway, but so is the World Baseball Classic, and Shohei Ohtani, who is just an absolute force of nature, the greatest baseball player these eyes have ever seen, and probably in the history of the sport, went off for Team Japan against Chinese Taipei this morning early on. 13-1 in only 7 innings. Ohtani, 3 for 4, a grand slam, 7 total bases, 5 RBI, only missed the cycle by the triple. Japan 10 runs in the first and third runs in the first and third, pardon me. And just, again, you have to consider Japan, as stacked as that United States roster is, and some of the other teams, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, some of the obvious ones to think about. Japan, do not count out this squad when you have Shohei Ohtani doing what he is doing on what feels like a daily basis. Now, basketball, huge news in the NBA as Jason Tatum, the superstar of the Boston Celtics, the return is looming. He is officially questionable to play tonight. First time he has had the Q tag all season long after rupturing his Achilles in a playoff series loss to the New York Knicks last May. Of course, has not played since. It's been 10 months. Shams Charania, ESPN, tweeted yesterday that the return could happen tonight against the Dallas Mavericks as Cooper Flagg makes something of a homecoming. Of course, the Maine native has never played at the TD Garden in Boston. Will have loads of family and friends in attendance, but Tatum right there to steal the spotlight with the expectation that he is going to play tonight. And Shams describing Tatum as, quote, ready to go. Now, props for this one for Tatum. At last look, only 12.5 points. We don't have any details, but you have to assume that he will be on a minutes restriction in that first game in, again, roughly 10 months. So 20, 25 minutes probably at most, something to consider. Sticking with basketball, last night, Victor Wembanyama, a future MVP in this league, albeit not this year. It's going to happen. 38 points. The Spurs handled the Pistons in what may have been an NBA Finals preview. 121-106. The Spurs won. They covered as narrow 2.5-point favorites. This is a game that we talked about liking the San Antonio side on the show just yesterday, about 24 hours ago. Wemby, again, monster performance, added 16 rebounds. De'Aaron Fox, almost 30 in the win as well. Cade Cunningham, who might be the MVP if SGA and Jokic don't meet the necessary games played 65 threshold, 26 points, 8 assists. As far as the Jazz go, they snapped a 7-game skid in Trae Young's debut for the Wizards. 122-112, the loss for the Wiz. Young, though, 19 minutes, might be sort of a similar situation, obviously, to the Tatum news that we talked about in terms of minutes restrictions coming off of injuries, although Young, of course, had played at some point earlier this year. But 19 minutes, 12 points, couple rebounds, 6 assists. The Jazz won as 4.5-point dogs on the road in that one. Ace Bailey, the rookie, 32 points. Let's hear from Trae Young. Oh, never mind. We keep going here. LeBron James breaking the NBA's career field goal record in a loss to the Nuggets, 120-113. The Nuggets, with that victory, cover as 3.5-point home favorites. LeBron broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record for career field goals in the loss, 15,338 for LeBron now, finishing the game with 16 points, which is generally in the neighborhood of what he gives you night to night at this stage of his career, north of 40. Jokic, triple-double for, again, the maybe MVP. 28 points, 12 rebounds, 13 assists. Jamal Murray also factored in with 28 points. The T-Wolves topped the Raptors at home. Anthony Edwards, many wondered, would he play? He did. 22 points in that one. The Wolves won and covered. They were 4.5-point favorites in this game. 5 straight victories for Minnesota. The Pelicans, in something of a tank fest at night, did crush Sacramento. 133-123, a nice double-digit win there. The Pels covered as 6.5-point road favorites. Zion, Sadiq Bey, Trey Murphy, all at least 20 points in that victory. The Kings, worst in the NBA. Granted, they are decimated, that roster, by season-ending injuries, but still 14-50 right now. And Russell Westbrook, we don't have time to play it for you, but went off on the media after the game. Obviously, he is not really enjoying what is going on in Sacramento, and those among the talking heads who are weighing in on all of that. Today, as mentioned, the NHL trade deadline, moves being made throughout the day. Some of the bigger names to already change homes ahead of the 4 o'clock Eastern deadline this afternoon. The Ducks traded for veteran John Carlson from the Capitals, 36-year-old D-man who was traded early this morning, and the Caps receiving a conditional first-round draft pick in 2026 or 27, along with a 27 third-round pick. And he's getting up there in age, but the guy is still producing. Also, the Avalanche, who are the Stanley Cup favorites on the odds board, acquiring Nicholas Waugh for a conditional first-round pick. As much more on the way here on NewsWire. Go nowhere. Back here on NewsWire, some NBA talk coming your way here. We mentioned, obviously, earlier on the Russell Westbrook unhappiness after a Kings blowout loss at the hands of the Pelicans, and at home, no less. And Russ, again, not a happy camper after that game. We told you we'd let you hear it. Here it is.
What y'all think, though? Because y'all got a lot of answers and y'all always be talking.
I have no answer.
Oh, it's very interesting. Y'all don't got no. You guys have a lot of opinions about how we do what we doing. What you got? Oh, you. Yeah, you make a lot of statements and broad statements that you have no context. So where do you get your context from? Are you in practice? Are you at our film session? Are you anywhere around the building? No, I haven't seen you at practice. So the false context of, and actually, do you know me?
I know you.
No, you don't know me. You don't know me. You don't know me. But you make a lot of comments as though you do know me.
The nine-time All-Star again, just exhibiting some frustration in what has been a terrible year for the team, and a guy who has bounced around, as we know, in recent years. You know, there was a point where it looked like he may be a member of the OKC Thunder forever, but since then, Houston, Washington, the Lakers, the Clippers, as he went crosstown, are really same building anyway, and Denver, and of course now Sacramento, and Lord knows, a very different situation with the Kings than it was with the Nuggets when you're playing alongside Jokic and you're viewed as a perennial contender. Now, to Westbrook's credit, I will say at, 37, 38 years old, he's not exactly turned in a terrible season, averaging 13 points to go along with, the rebounds are a little bit low, 5 and about 6.5 assists, but, not going to garner himself any award recognition off of what he has done so far this year, just trying to get out unscathed, but doesn't really feel like a farewell tour either for us. I think he's going to be hanging out for just a little bit longer. Now, we mentioned before the really big story here in the NBA tonight, at least will the pomp and circumstance live up to the reality, meaning a questionable tag on a superstar player who hasn't played for 10 months. Boy, let's hope he doesn't get ruled out. He actually does play, and that is Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics in action tonight against Cooper Flagg of the Dallas Mavericks, playing host at the Garden there. Flagg, as mentioned, a homecoming for him with plenty of family and friends in attendance. The Maine native who has never played at the Garden before. He's been talking quite a bit this week about the excitement surrounding that. Did play last night as well, but on a minutes restriction, probably so that Jason Kidd can have him a little closer to full go tonight. But what should we expect from that game, from Tatum's performance? And just to look at what Boston will do going forward in a wide open East. Let's get into it. Carlan Gay joins us here from Sporting News. Carlan, it's good to see you. And are you joining the chorus of people that are excited to have Jason Tatum back on the floor tonight, assuming, of course, that does happen? We've got a quick technical issue to work out here in terms of the audio, as you just saw, obviously, with Carlan. We'll have that all set for you here and get his thoughts on Tatum, what to expect going forward. I think we've got him now. Carlan, we'll welcome you back in here. And, well, as I just said, what do we expect?
Totally my bad, Adam. I'm an idiot. I left the mute button on. Anyway, Jason Tatum. I am excited about it. I don't know if my facial reaction said it, but I am excited about Jason Tatum coming back. One of the best players in the NBA. How could you not be excited about having him back in the lineup? And for a Boston Celtics team who actually looks pretty good without him, they get even better. And, the entire New England area and every Celtic fan around the world should be excited about this guy coming back, who is a guy that helped them win a championship, who is arguably their best player. And when he's at his best, and we see Jaylen Brown being at his best as well, we know that normally means that they're going to have a good chance of raising another banner. So super excited to just have him on the court as a fan. But looking through the Celtics lens, I think I'm even more excited because they've had a great season so far, and it could get even better if Tatum comes back, and he is Jason Tatum.
Let's build upon that. The updated championship odds have Oklahoma City as the runaway favorite right now after winning last year, as we know, though they're dealing with plenty of injuries. Then you have San Antonio, then Denver. The top team in the East, though, is Boston at 41-21, doing what it has done so far this year. With all the offseason turnover, gone is Porzingis, is Holiday, is Horford, is Cornette. You obviously don't have Tatum for the first 3 quarters of the year, and led by Jaylen Brown, his MVP case, and a potential coach of the year in Joe Mazzulla, they're, again, doing what they're doing. With Tatum back now, would this be your team in the East? Do you expect them to go on an NBA Finals run?
That's the $1 million question. I think I need to see it first before I make that decision and say that they are back. Now I agree with the odds. If I was laying my money on it, I would probably put it on Boston right now to get to the NBA Finals. But I need to see, one, if Jason Tatum is still Jason Tatum, and then two, Adam, if the Celtics can actually adapt around being able to kind of ingest Jason Tatum back onto the floor. Like, this isn't a role player, right? Like, that's coming back to the team. It is a star. It's a guy that is going to require some possessions. Guy is going to require some usage. And while he has to get used to how the team's been playing, the team also has to get used to him and change a little bit of the things and sacrifices that they have to make to just incorporate him to get back into lineup so he can be at his best. So I need to see that first before I can flat out say, hey, they are the number one team with a bullet. And the only reason why I need to see it is because it's when it's happening. We don't have much time for them to figure that out. Yes, they played before, but this still is a different team. So we don't have much time to figure that out. And then you don't want to be figuring that out in the playoffs. Like, that's not the time you want to be doing that. So if they could quickly get him back into the mix, get him back acclimated, everything looks good, I'll feel better about it. But right now, I'll put my money on it, but I won't say that they will be the team that I would go to the Eastern Conference representative of the finals.
He's got a 20-game ramp up to the playoffs. I wouldn't expect he's going to play in every game, obviously, factor in back-to-backs, that sort of thing. But 12.5 is the points number, the prop on Tatum tonight in making his return. Now, I won't put you in a spot where you need to be our betting expert, but just how do you feel about a number that low for a guy of this caliber, coupled with the fact that I'd assume there's going to be some sort of a minutes restriction, maybe 20, 25, we'll see.
Yeah, and I think that number is actually a little bit low, considering that I expect him to get back and take his time in terms of going to the basket. He's going to come back. He's going to be shooting a lot of threes, in my opinion, and those step back threes. That's probably something he worked on the entire time while he was out. I would go over that number tonight if I'm going to lay them somewhere.
I'll tell people there is a Jason Tatum tab on some books where you can guess the method of his first field goal, and 3-point field goal is actually the favorite right now. Carlan, can we have you hang on a few more minutes? We'll get to some other NBA news.
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, we'll be right back here on NewsWire. Back on Newswire, talking some NBA with Carlan Gay, Sporting News. And Carlan, I was asking you about the East and the Celtics and whether or not you can trust them with the return of Jason Tatum, which we assume is going to be tonight, but technically questionable against Dallas in a game in which Boston is a heavy favorite, by the way, 15.5 points at home. Kind of nerve-wracking to lay a number like that. But let me take you over to the West for a moment, because you've got an Oklahoma City team that, again, overwhelming favorite to repeat, really hasn't been healthy all season long. You're missing Jalen Williams, and then you're missing SGA. Now you're missing Williams again. Other role players have been in and out of the lineup as well. The Nuggets have had their injury issues as well with, Gordon, you're still waiting to get back. The Spurs I have an investment in the Spurs to win the title, and I would like to implore more people to invest in San Antonio, except I wonder if the Spurs kind of run to the same thing the Thunder did a couple years ago, the Celtics did before they won a title. Young teams that are inexperienced, that are unproven, they kind of need to get to the dance, go a couple rounds first, learn some lessons before they come back and repeat. Or do you think San Antonio actually could go all the way?
My gut says I agree with you in that regard, where you kind of have to have your heart broken at some point in the playoffs to learn from that experience, so it makes you hungry the next time out. We've seen it with the most recent champions, even the Nuggets. If you want to go back that far, like they had their heart broken before they got their hand raised in their title championship run. And you mentioned the Celtics. Thunder had that happen to them as well. It's normally with the younger teams that we kind of expect them to, like, all right, we'll get to the conference finals maybe, and then you get your heart broken, and then next year, all the expectations are there. You should get over the hump. Those teams didn't have Victor Wembanyama, though, Adam. Like, this guy is a different beast. Like, he is phenomenal. He's a top 5 player in the NBA right now, pound for pound, bar none. I could even put him, I can make an argument. I could get him up to the top 3. I do think that between him and Giannis Antetokounmpo, if you put them both on the table right now, I might take Victor Wembanyama over Giannis, who, by the way, has been there, done that, won an MVP, won Defensive Player of the Year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Wemby hasn't done those things outside of the Defensive Player of the Year. So I love Victor, and I don't want to put a ceiling on him. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say that they can't get it done. Health is going to be the important thing for everybody going through the postseason. We know that that's what it comes down to every year. I will say that on the Thunder side, while they haven't had their stars totally for the entire regular season, they're still 3-4 games ahead of where the Spurs are, and that says a lot. Without SGA, without J-Dub, who's missed a large chunk of the year, Chet missed some time, for them to be still good enough to keep winning and stacking these wins, it means something, and it's actually building confidence for those others. And that trade at the deadline, where they were able to get the sharpshooter, his name is escaping me right now, from Duke.
McCain?
McCain, Jerry McCain. That's a big trade that I think kind of falls under the radar, because he's another guy that can come off the bench, give you 20, and you don't expect him to do that on a nightly basis. He's in a perfect scenario to do that. So I do like the Thunder. I think if the Nuggets are healthiest, they make it all the way to the finals. But I would not count out the Spurs. It's going to be all dependent on one, health, and path to get to the finals as well, who you play.
Taking nothing away from the Nuggets and Joker, who, I think Jokic is the best player in the world even still, despite not being the MVP favorite. But I think a lot of people would like to see Thunder against the Spurs, in part because, one thing we've both left out here is the Spurs have owned the Thunder this year. Now, to your point, OKC wasn't fully healthy for all of those games, but I wonder how that translates in a potential 7-game series.
I think it translates into Spurs actually coming in confident, even though they're going to be the underdogs, because 3 of those games happened in a 12-day span. And I don't care how injured the Thunder were in those 12 games. That was an opportunity for them to send a message to a young and upcoming team and say, hey, we still have the control, the stranglehold on this entire conference. And the Spurs beat them every time. So, that is something that I think the Spurs could take and come into a series and have that as a confident piece to their puzzle. Again, the playoffs are a different beast. The way the playoffs are covered are a different beast. You and I know that, the plays are broken down similar. Like, it's just different, completely different. Spurs need to go through that. Victor needs to go through that, and we'll see what happens.
Less than a minute with you here, but with what the Charlotte Hornets are doing, most recently throttling the Celtics in their house, should we assume that not only this is a playoff team, but one that could really make some noise, maybe go a couple rounds?
I don't know about a couple rounds, but they can make the playoffs. And I'm actually going to go see them tonight against the Heat. The Heat are in town. I will tell you this. It blows my mind that the Hornets are still in 9th place in the Eastern Conference, given how well they've played since the turn of the calendar. That's to tell you how bad the start of the season was for this team and how little hope this team had, coming into the season. But they're healthy now, and they have a Rookie of the Year, Con Knipple. He's going to win.
That's something when you win 16 and 19, whatever it is, you're still only around 500. Carlan Gay, Sporting News. Thanks, sir. We are halfway home here on NewsWire on SportsGrid. Thanks for hanging with us. I am Adam Kaufman, joined now by Sam McQuillan, our friend from Legal Sports Report, a regular here on the program. Sam, good to see you.
Good to be with you, Adam.
So let's get into some of the news. I know, the two of us would love to just keep talking about the Knicks-Nuggets game tonight as we were backstage, but you wrote about 2 U.S. senators have introduced the End Prediction Markets Corruption Act. That happened just yesterday, which would bar top government officials from buying or selling contracts tied to the outcome of real-world events. We know, obviously, the prediction markets and real-world events with what happened in Iran. It's been a whole fiasco in terms of Kalshi and people chasing money, again, surrounding the, death of an individual, let alone, this isn't us wagering on the trading on the side of who wins a game or who wins an Oscar or something like that. Again, real world events. So what do you make of this act and what's to come?
Yeah, legislation is kind of just a product of where we are with prediction markets right now. I mean, it's a good question. It's, prediction markets really started to take off about a year ago. They've been around for a long time, to be clear. They were very popular with the election and everything, but when they really started to take off was when Trump got into office. All of a sudden, Kalshi started offering sports bets, and that is now about like 87% of their business. So to be clear, most of the activity that happens on these prediction markets is why you have all these lawsuits. You're talking about people being really concerned, senators mainly, about insider information being traded. You mentioned a couple of cases. There's about $500 million placed just before the Iran strikes over the past weekend on those strikes happening, which have raised questions. Is there insider trading information being leaked? Anytime you're betting on the outcome of something to happen, when it's a government, decision specifically, there's the concern about, did someone in the White House talk to somebody? Did somebody's brother place something on it? When you talk about the state regulations that we have with sports books, it's easier to monitor that stuff. They have a lot of robust regulations in place. The issue with prediction markets right now seems to be the CFTC is the one that's supposed to regulate this, but there's really nobody working at the CFTC. It's very understaffed. They really have not flagged any of these cases. So what you have happen are these instances where you have these sketchy bets being placed. You mentioned that the Kalshi had to refund bets placed on the supreme leader in Iran to be out by a certain date, clarifying that that's not a war market or an assassination market, which is technically prohibited under the law, but it's just the Wild West right now with the regulation, with all these kind of things. And I think senators are starting to use it as a political standpoint of, we can maybe score some points by saying everyone's banned from doing this. And we'll see what happens with this bill. I'd liken it to the criticism that happens a lot about senators betting on the stock market, which we know they've not been able to pass that, in part because the people that's affecting, they're the ones making those decisions. I don't think they want to do that. So I wonder what kind of opposition we'll see here, given the fact that it's only really Democrats proposing this right now. The G and the Trump administration has been really embracing prediction markets and them as sources to find information faster than the news. Like, to these points, when you have insider information, we know kind of the news before it happens, but there's the sketchy part of that is, why are people making millions of dollars off of the death of someone? So I think lawmakers want to use this as an opportunity to kind of score some political points, rein everything in. But we'll certainly see how it develops. You often have issues in politics that start one way and then they get completely thrown another way. The prediction markets things has been, and that's not even with the sports factor in. So it's definitely a really interesting story right now to keep watching how Washington's appetite for this stuff kind of develops, and just where their attention is right now with this stuff, because it's pretty crazy.
Well, the Wild West, as you said, but I'm also just curious, not that you've got the crystal ball to be able to tell us, but I'm wondering what the future of all of this is inside the next year or two. It's being looked at, being handled very differently than, say, gambling legalization, which, as we know, continues to spread from state to state to the point where eventually we'll get, we're basically, roughly 80% of the way there as it is right now. But with prediction markets, you're seeing companies jump quickly to react to the popularity of this. Sportsbooks creating super apps, Underdog this week laying off a quarter of the company. So it can basically change a lot of the content direction into that of prediction markets. Where are we heading here?
Yeah, I really wish I could pull out my crystal ball and predict accurately the future and, put money on it and see if I could win. But I think the answer of where we're heading is more uncertainty, and in the short term, more companies, like you mentioned, trying to capitalize on that. When prediction markets first kind of took off this past year, there was a little bit of a hesitancy from sports books. You mentioned DraftKings and their super app they're doing now. FanDuel's doing prediction markets. There was a little bit of a hesitancy to jump in to saying, we don't know if this is exactly legal. We don't know what will happen with this stuff. But as the Trump administration has really embraced this, they were the ones who lifted a ban on Polymarket re-entering the US. That's why Polymarket is back. Donald Trump Jr. is a board advisor to Kalshi and Polymarket. Trump's Truth Social platform is partnered with Polymarket. It's going to launch its own prediction market. So I think what we've seen is, as the White House and the executive branch has really said, no, this stuff is here to stay, the sports betting companies, the likes of Underdog, they've said, this is actually going to save us a ton of money if we do this. We won't have to pay any state taxes on it. Underdog, they got rid of, I think, like 300 people, a lot of their workforce. We can just really go into a much easier business. That's kind of what always the secret of gambling has been, is how do we do it for a really, cost-effective way? If we don't call it sports betting, if we call it prediction markets, we don't have to pay gambling taxes, and we don't have to hire as many employees. So I think as long as the current administration is embracing this and supporting this, we'll see what the lawsuits, how they play out with the Supreme Court eventually. But as long as the executive branch is really embracing this, I think you're just going to see more people jump in and try to take advantage. But then in 3 years from now, we could have a totally different administration and the laws could be rewritten and completely changed. So you just never really know. I think the only sure thing is that in the short term, companies will try to make a lot of money out of it.
Sam, you noted at the end of last month that Missouri sports betting handle fell about 30% in its second month, the revenue dropping about 50%. Online sports books issuing nearly $600 million in promo credits during the month of December, deductions that obviously, as you said, once again, gutted taxable revenues. And so some states are always going to do better than others, depends on the appetite, obviously, for gambling. And I'm sure the teams at whatever the sport that are part of those states, how rabid the fan bases are, these all come into play as well. But what do you make of the early struggles, failures, even during the state of Missouri as it relates to sports betting handle?
Yeah, it's actually been there's actually been a lot of good success for the sports betting companies in terms of how much people are betting in the state. It's just the tax system which is kind of messed up right now. Missouri launched in December, but they've only made, like you mentioned, about $660,000 in taxes, and that's because the state allows these operators to deduct all the promos they're putting out from their taxable revenues. So you have a situation where a company like FanDuel, for example, took $200 million in handle, paid out $166 million in winnings, but they also issued about $55 million in promotions, which means they got to write that all off of their taxable handle. And FanDuel hasn't paid any taxes in Missouri for the first 2 months. So when you're talking about the biggest sports betting company there is not paying taxes, the lawmakers are going to come back to the drawing board and say, okay, we need to get rid of these promo deductions, as we've seen a number of other states do as well. If this new law passes, which is being proposed in Missouri, they would have made about 57 times more in taxes than they've made already in first 2 months. That's quite a difference. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't have this to begin with. We kind of saw this early on with sports betting, states realizing, oh, they're deducting a ton of promos. We're making no tax revenue that we projected. Let's go out and figure out a way to change it. I think Missouri, late to the game with sports betting, obviously, is late to the game as well with this tax change, but we'll have to see if it passes.
All right, Sam, real fast. Your Knicks going to get this done in Denver tonight?
I think so. I would take the Knicks.
There you go. See, he's not just giving you the legal news relates to sports betting and prediction markets. Sam McQuillan, Legal Sports Report. Thank you, sir. Talk again soon. We are back here on NewsWire. We will continue on, mix in just a little bit from the world of college basketball. Of course, conference tournaments going on. The true madness right around the corner with the field of 68 being determined within the next couple of weeks here. Michigan held off Iowa in Iowa City in its most recent game yesterday, the number 3 team in the country, and of course a popular betting favorite to win the championship, 71-68. It was a narrow one. Michigan undefeated on the road for the first time in the program's history at 11-0. Iowa covering as a 9.5-point home dog. You had Morez Johnson Jr., 16 points in this one. Johnson with 6 assists as well. Michigan will conclude its season tomorrow, Saturday, at home against Michigan State, in-state rival. Meanwhile, speaking of the Spartans, number 8 team in the country edged Rutgers at home, 91-87, another very close one for Rutgers, covering as a huge road dog of 20.5. So that one sweat-free if you were on the dog and you never had a chance with the favorite. Jeremy Fears and Cone Carr with 21 points each for Sparty. MSU clinching a top 4 seed in the Big Ten Conference Tournament and a double bye as well. Again, we mentioned earlier with Geno Smith getting cut loose by the Raiders, just another one for the QB carousel in the NFL. Some more NFL news. Danielle Hunter signing a 1-year, $40 million extension with the Houston Texans. Huge for them, obviously. Hunter finishing last year with 15 sacks, 3rd in the NFL, 15 tackles for loss. That was 8th. Second team All-Pro honors as well for the Texans' number 2 defense, scoring against specifically 17.5 points, and total defense overall at well south of 300 yards allowed per game. Cam Jordan, defensive end, set to become a free agent, 36 years old, 15 years with the Saints, and franchise leader in sacks at the end of 2022 as well. So he's only built upon that over time. 132 career sacks with the Saints, far and away the team's leader in that category. But could he bookend his career and, obviously finish things out? Be a rarity in these days, playing your whole career with the one team. We will see. Let's bring in our final guest of the program, John Lafayette. Thrilled to have him here with us to talk about the business of sport and bring in, obviously, it's, before with Sam, it's the legal markets, it's prediction markets, all of this. In this case, it's cable, it's TV, it's streaming services, what all that looks like. John, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing great. I want to start with Paramount and Warner Brothers and, their deal and obviously the fallout that has come from it and how it's going to impact, obviously, the NFL, which, as we know, content is king when it comes to NFL streaming and lesser leagues for that matter as well. What do you see?
That's right. This combination of Paramount and Warner Brothers, if it gets together, is going to create a sports giant, but it's still going to have to deal with the biggest force in sports, which is the NFL. The NFL has a clause in its deal that allows it to renegotiate if one of its partners is involved in a merger, and Paramount is going to wind up with $80 billion in debt if it completes the deal. But the head of the company, David Ellison, says they're still going to have enough money to pay the NFL, and it's going to need a lot of cash to do it. Ellison already made a big splash in sports, paying $7.7 billion for the UFC. Those matches are going to wind up on CBS. They're going to wind up on Paramount Plus. Now they can wind up on TNT as well. And that's sort of the plan. The combination of Paramount and Warner's are going to have a whole lot of sports. In addition to the NFL, you're talking about things like the Masters, March Madness, Big Ten football and basketball, Major League Baseball, the NHL, the French Open, a whole long list. Now, this company is going to have to cut back, and one of the things it's going to probably cut back on is some of these smaller sports. So those guys are all going to be jockeying for position. Now, the NHL, their deal is coming up pretty soon. They want to get that deal done before the NFL comes for an even bigger slice of the pie. And, all the other guys who are in business with the NFL eventually are going to have to look for how much their NFL deals are going to be more expensive going on and on. They're already looking to figure out, how am I going to afford this? What do I have to drop to do this? And it means that all of these other leagues are going to be in a position where their current deals, they might have to take less. They might have to go to streaming. And that's going to make life complicated for them. It's going to make life complicated for fans. And it's going to make some sports more difficult to find.
John, a good buddy of mine, Jason Benet, himself a new gig. He has been over Fox Sports calling college football, basketball, baseball, a collection of things in addition to his day job, if you will, as the television voice of the Detroit Tigers. But he has been tabbed by NBC to be its lead for now the Sunday Night Baseball package, which, as we know, for many years was on ESPN. Now it's NBC, and Jason Benetti, part of that lead broadcast crew, making his debut March 26th, just 20 days out when the Mets open their season against the Pirates. How do you like the move?
I think it's terrific. I'm in Chicago, and Jason was the voice of the White Sox for several years until the White Sox said, even though you're terrific, we don't want you doing games for Fox. We don't want you doing games for ESPN. We want you here in Chicago. And Jason was a little bit too big for that. I mean, as this shows, he's a national kind of voice, and that would have reflected well on the White Sox. And people here in Chicago say, small time thinking for the White Sox. Jason's got a big job now with NBC. He's going to be working with Bob Costas, who's a legend when it comes to play-by-play, and Benetti is sort of filling those kinds of shoes. It's going to be an interesting plan for game by game. They're going to sort of pair Jason with a group of analysts who are tied to the team, not a single analyst that's going to work with them in all the game. If they go to Detroit, it's going to be someone who knows Detroit. It's going to be, if they're playing Los Angeles, it's going to be someone who knows Los Angeles. So that's sort of an interesting plan that the guys from NBC have. Now, they've already signed a lot of guys for their pregame show, in addition to Costas. You've got all these recently retired stars. You're talking about Clayton Kershaw, Anthony Rizzo, Joey Votto. So, it's going to be a big job for Jason, and Jason is a big part of that lineup that NBC is putting together as they start their baseball lineup.
Meanwhile, his Tigers, with their own new regional network as well, Detroit Sportsnet, only have about 20 seconds, but what do you think?
All of these guys are going to be, all of these teams have to try something now that the regional sports networks are kaput, and streaming is going to be a bigger and bigger part of what they do, and that's part of what Detroit Sportsnet is going to try to get to do to sign up people.
John Lafayette on the business of sport. Thank you so much, sir.
Good to see you.
We are back here on NewsWire. Again, Adam Kaufman in for Craig Mish. He'll be back with you on Monday. I want to thank our crew behind the scenes. Of course, Chris and Frank and Tommy and John, the whole crew, all of the guests that have popped by throughout the program. We appreciate their time as well. It is time for the NewsWire Sports Grid Last Licks. So we've been talking a lot about Jason Tatum's expected imminent return to the lineup against Dallas tonight, where again, Boston at home is a hefty 15.5-point favorite. Tatum has not played in about 10 months since rupturing his Achilles in a playoff series loss to the New York Knicks in the second round last year. The much anticipated debut for the final stretch run, the last quarter of the regular season to ramp up Boston for a playoff run that could have the C's as the favorite to come out of the East when all is said and done. It's where it already sits right now, and Tatum hasn't played a minute yet, but of course it's baked into the price. His head coach, Joe Mazzulla, was asked on local radio in Boston about the conspiracy that Tatum could return on March 14th. That, of course, would be after tonight, after a 3-game trip, first game back home against the Wizards. The reason for the 314 speculation, 314, that's the area code in St. Louis where Tatum is very proudly from, and Pi Day and all of these other things. Everyone wants to attach some sort of a meaning when, in fact, again, questionable tonight. He may very well play on the apparently very meaningless March 6th. So we will see if that happens. But Mazzulla, just a quote for the ages, said, I may not even be alive by that day. I go to bed questionable, I wake up probable. And if you follow Joe Mazzulla in any way, shape, or form, you know this is just another one in the holster, in the chamber for Joe Mazzulla. Dude is a quote machine. He is a lot of fun to listen to here locally, I can promise you that. Going from basketball to football to baseball, kind of all in one, Kyler Murray, one of the guys that is part of the upcoming QB carousel after Arizona deciding to move on from the young veteran looking for a new home in the league, and in all likelihood is still going to be an NFL QB next year. A lot of people want to attach him, for instance, to the perceived opening in Minnesota if J.J. McCarthy is benched for a more veteran, higher caliber guy like, in theory, a Kyler Murray to come in. But the former Oakland Athletics who drafted Murray, not that he ever actually did go and play Major League Baseball, but, you know, they had and continue to have his rights. The soon-to-be Vegas, I guess, current Sacramento Athletics have said, hey, if football doesn't work out, come on over, hang with us. You can play a little bit of baseball. Athletics GM David Force said the A's are always open, that's the quote, to Murray returning to baseball. The A's still hold his rights, drafted him 9th overall in 2018. The quote, he and his baseball representatives know that we're always open to him exploring a return to baseball with the A's if that time ever comes. You can't help but think just a little bit about, you know, Michael Jordan, and we're talking about different caliber of athletes, obviously, but Jordan leaving the NBA and going embarking upon baseball and playing with the Birmingham Barons and all of that stuff. And I know other guys more recently have, you know, gone cross sport and all of that, but is Kyler Murray going to be the next? Is he at, you know, whatever, how old, you know, late 20s, approaching 30? Is he going to make the move to baseball and start to come up through the minors? I kind of doubt it. But hey, Tim Tebow tried before him, got himself to AAA with the Syracuse Mets. Who's to say that Kyler Murray doesn't turn his attention to that? I think he's probably still a starter in the NFL next season, but I guess we will find out. The odds to win the Mall Food Hall, last lick number 3 here, and this one, interesting. You've got the Cheesecake Factory at plus 160, Auntie Anne's at plus 320, Panda Express, that would probably have my vote, at 6-1, Cinnabon at 10-1, Jamba Juice 17-1, Sbarro 25-1, Subway, Dark Horse 40-1. All you guys want to jump in on the Jersey Mike streets, don't count out, you know, Eatin' Fresh at Subway at 40-1, Miss Fields at 48-1, and Now I Want Cookies, and Dippin' Dots, the ice cream of the future that never really quite took off, did it, at 55-1. What is the best mall food? You know, where would you, looking at that odds board, where would you put your money, folks? Boy, again, I think Panda Express at 6-1. You always know what you're getting, and it just finds a way to hit right, doesn't it? That's where I would look. But if I'm ordering these things and I'm examining the odds board here, as you see on your screen, I look at that 6-1 value. Again, 40 to 1 on Subway would be unreal consideration for me. Cheesecake Factory, way too easy at plus 160. Plus, the menu is so vast. You have so many options. And Dippin' Dots, if I could eat Dippin' Dots right now, I would. But the problem is they're really hard to find. Again, thanks to everyone behind the scenes. NewsWire returns on Monday for you, noon to 1 Eastern Time, our brand new time and distance, if you will. 1 hour a day. We'll talk to you again then.